I'm Charlotte Bennett, 34 years old, and the night my father turned 65, I stood outside the entrance of a luxury hotel with my name on every payroll check, and still I wasn't on the guest list. My sister blocked the doorway like she always had, smug and certain I didn't belong. My mother leaned in close and whispered, "Please don't cause a scene tonight. It's your father's birthday." No one asked if I was okay. No one thought to wonder why I was standing outside the very building they'd chosen to celebrate inside. By the time the elevator doors opened behind them, the room would fall quiet, and everything would shift. Before I go any further, let me know where you're listening from in the comments, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever been treated like a stranger in your own life. I was raised in a home where appearances mattered more than presence. My father, Douglas Bennett, was a man who scheduled things months in advance and expected formal thank you notes after dinner. My mother, June, made sure the house stayed spotless, the roast came out on time, and no one told stories that might upset the mood. My sister, Hannah, 4 years younger, was the family's golden thread honor rolls, piano recitals, early admission to law school. She was what people brought up when they asked how the Bennetts were doing. As for me, I was the quiet one. Not rebellious, not troubled, just the daughter who didn't follow a script. While Hannah climbed the corporate ladder in Manhattan, I was working night shifts at small hotels, learning the business from the inside out. No one really noticed when I left home. There was no farewell dinner, no proud send-off, just a quick hug in the kitchen and a reminder to check in when you can. I didn't go to grad school. I didn't marry young. I didn't settle into the kind of career my parents could brag about. What I did was hustle. I cleaned rooms, handled check-ins, managed overbooked weekends, and stayed late to train new staff. At 27, I took a risk and invested in a run-down inn on the outskirts of town. 3 years later, I owned it outright. And then another, and then another. By 31, I'd taken on my biggest challenge yet, a crumbling Art Deco building downtown, long abandoned and water-stained. But something about it called to me. I poured everything I had into it. 18 months later, it reopened as the Bennett House on 5th, one of the city's most sought-after boutique hotels. The press wrote about it. Food critics raved about the restaurant. But no one in my family knew. I never told them. Not because I was hiding, but because no one ever asked. So when I got wind that my sister had planned our father's birthday dinner there at my hotel, I waited. There was no formal invitation, just a forwarded email with a dress code and start time. No greeting. No hope you can make it. Just the same unspoken message I'd lived with for years: you can come, but don't expect to be seen. Still, I made preparations. Quietly. Precisely. I had the best wine brought in, the lighting adjusted to match the mood, and his favorite bourbon set aside just for the toast. I told my staff not to mention my name. I wouldn't be announced. Not yet. And the moment I stepped through those doors wearing a dress that fit like confidence and heels that echoed on the marble, I saw her waiting. My sister, smiling like she had every reason to be in charge. She had no idea who the hotel really belonged to. I stepped through the front entrance same as any other guest, my heels tapping softly against the polished marble floor. The lighting in the lobby was warm and golden, casting a soft glow on the velvet benches and restored brass fixtures. A string quartet played in the background, their music drifting gently through the air. It didn't feel like a hotel that had once been crumbling and abandoned. It felt like a rival. I had chosen a black gown, simple but tailored, with a low back and a quiet kind of strength. As I walked toward the check-in desk, Avery was already waiting. She kept her tone even, but I caught the glint in her eye. "The Bennetts arrived about 15 minutes ago," she said. "Your sister's made 2 complaints about the lighting and 1 about the wine temperature." I nodded. Sounds about right. She's also asked if someone from the staff can take family pictures, Avery added, but nothing too dramatic. "Oh, and she specifically asked that we avoid photographing you if you're here." There was a pause. I didn't ask her to repeat it. I'd heard it the first time. I looked down the hallway that led to the dining wing. From where we stood, I could already hear the gentle hum of conversation, silverware being arranged, laughter from familiar voices. My family was here eating, drinking, celebrating on my property under my roof, and not a single one of them had thought to call. I turned toward the dining room entrance just as Hannah stepped into view. Her dress was emerald green, satin form-fitting. Her posture, as always, said the room belonged to her. But when she saw me, her expression shifted. "You're really here?" she asked, folding her arms. "Why wouldn't I be?" I kept my voice calm. "It's Dad's night, Charlotte, not yours." She glanced around, clearly hoping someone from the staff would appear to back her up. "You can't just stroll in uninvited. I'm not crashing anything I said. I'm walking into my hotel." Her laugh was sharp and dismissive. "Your hotel?" She looked me up and down. "Honestly, Charlotte, you can't even afford to eat here." She didn't get to say more. Our mother appeared at her side, dressed in navy, with a beaded clutch clutched tightly in one hand. She leaned in close and whispered, "Please, don't embarrass your father tonight. We've worked so hard on this." I didn't respond, because just behind them the revolving glass door turned and in stepped Raymond Callahan, CEO of one of the largest real estate groups in the Midwest, my father's boss. Hannah was still talking when he approached. She didn't notice him at first, but he saw me right away. His face shifted the moment our eyes met. "Miss Bennett," he said with a nod and a slight bow. "Didn't expect to see you here." "It's good to see you, Mr. Callahan," I replied. He smiled. "Likewise. Thank you again for hosting us in such a remarkable venue." Then, clearly enough for the entire lobby to hear, he added, "Good evening, ma'am." That word stopped everything. The music continued playing, but softer somehow. Conversations faded. Hannah's mouth parted slightly, her expression caught somewhere between confusion and disbelief. Our mother blinked, the corners of her smile falling. You know Charlotte?" she asked him. Mr. Callahan didn't hesitate. "Of course. We've worked together on 2 projects, one in San Diego and another in Chicago." Brilliant strategist, one of the sharpest minds in hospitality. Before I could speak, Avery returned. "Miss Bennett," she said gently, "the Winston suite is ready, staff is in place, your father's bourbon has been decanted." "Thank you," I said. Hannah's voice cracked through the air. "Wait, what is going on?" Mr. Callahan turned to her. "Are you family?" "She's my sister," Hannah said quickly. "Then I'd suggest," he said evenly, "you show your sister the respect her position warrants, especially in her own establishment." She didn't respond. From across the lobby, my father approached. He hadn't seen any of this unfold. He was laughing at something a colleague had said, drink in hand. He didn't notice the way everyone had shifted. As he came closer, our mother leaned in again, but this time her tone had changed. "Why didn't you tell us, Charlotte?" she asked, softer now. "All this time, this place is yours." I looked her in the eye. No one ever asked. Behind her, Hannah turned toward the dining suite again, a little slower this time, as if she were seeing it differently now, not just as a room in a hotel, but as a space someone had created. I took a breath and stepped forward. "Let's not keep the guests waiting." The staff greeted me as I entered. "Welcome, Miss Bennett. Lovely to have you with us, ma'am." The lighting in the Winston suite was dim and elegant. Tall white orchids rested in a centerpiece of eucalyptus. Linen napkins folded with care. Glasses glimmered. Every detail had been selected for that moment. And as we entered, Mr. Callahan offered me his arm. "Shall we?" My father saw us as we approached. He stood slowly, his eyes moving between me and the man beside me. "Charlotte," he asked, "you know Ray?" I smiled. "Dad, Ray works for me." The room went still again. He blinked. "You? "Would I own this hotel?" I said. "And 4 others." For a second, no one said anything. Then Mr. Callahan added, "She's my boss on 3 projects, one of our top partners. You should be very proud." My father sat back stunned. My mother remained standing. Hannah didn't sit at all. And for the first time in that family, in that space, at that table, I wasn't the one in the background. The evening was only beginning. But everything had already changed. The door to the Winston suite closed quietly behind us. The chatter had softened. The staff moved with quiet confidence, placing the first course with a polished rhythm. My seat at the head of the table beside my father had already been set with a name card. One of the servers refilled glasses without prompting. The wine was from my private collection, something I'd chosen weeks earlier. No one at the table asked where it came from. My father sat still for a long moment. The bourbon in his hand caught the light. He looked down at the gold-rimmed plate in front of him, then slowly raised his eyes. "You own this place?" he asked again, more to himself than to anyone in particular. "Yes," I said. "I've owned it for a few years now." He nodded once, then leaned back in his chair. The other guests shifted in their seats. Someone at the far end cleared their throat. A server stepped forward with a tray and set a small dish in front of each guest grilled endive with goat cheese and pear glaze, one of the appetizers I'd helped design early in the hotel's reopening. Across the table, my mother sat with her hands in her lap, smoothing the edge of her linen napkin over and over again. She didn't speak. She didn't look at me. Hannah had taken a seat farther down near the cousins. Her posture was stiff. She didn't reach for her wine. For a long time, the only sound in the room was silverware against porcelain. Then softly, my mother spoke. "Why didn't you tell us?" I glanced at her. "Tell you what?" "About this," she said, motioning to the space around us. "The hotel. Everything you've built." I took a breath, because every time I tried to explain what I was doing, it got turned into a joke or brushed aside. It was easier to let you think what you already thought. She looked down again. One of the servers refilled my father's glass. He didn't stop them. He sipped the bourbon slowly. "This is the one from Kentucky, isn't it?" he asked. "It is," I said. He nodded. "It's good." No one responded. The main course was brought out a few minutes later, grilled salmon with citrus beurre blanc. The dish had taken months to perfect. I'd worked with the chef personally on it, wanting something light but memorable. No one commented, but I saw the way a few of the guests paused after the first bite. My father set his fork down, carefully wiped his mouth with his napkin, and looked at me. "This recipe," he said. "It's yours, isn't it?" I nodded. "It's excellent." It was the closest he'd ever come to offering a compliment. The rest of the meal passed in careful silence. Conversations picked back up slowly, cautiously. No one brought up my name. No one asked questions. But I could feel it, the shift. The room had changed. At dessert, the servers placed small cream-colored envelopes in front of each guest. Inside were gift certificates for weekend stays at one of my other properties. It had been planned well in advance, a thank you gesture I'd arranged, without knowing the dinner would fall on this exact night. One of the cousins whispered something to Hannah. She didn't answer. A few minutes later, she spoke up. Her voice was quiet but steady. "So you've been doing all this," she said, gesturing around, "while we thought you were still working the front desk somewhere." "Yes," I said. She nodded once. "Not that there's anything wrong with that." "No, there isn't." She looked away. "I didn't know." "I know." Another pause. Then she added, "I guess I should have asked." I didn't say anything back. After the final course, people began to leave, slowly, quietly. A few said thank you. Some offered nods. A few of my father's colleagues came over with polite words and handshakes. One of them looked surprised when I mentioned another property by name. Another asked if I planned to expand out of state. I told him I was thinking about it. Hannah left without another word. My mother hovered at the door, then followed behind. My father stayed. He held his glass, the last bit of bourbon warming at the bottom, and looked around the room. "I always thought you'd figure something out," he said. "Find your way." "I didn't lose it," I replied. "You just didn't see where it led." He didn't argue. He just nodded once and stood. After the suite had emptied, I made my way back to the lobby. The string quartet had finished. The candles along the walls flickered lower. The night staff had begun to tidy up quietly and carefully. I sat down on one of the velvet benches near the elevator under a framed photograph from the hotel's grand opening. In the picture, I was standing alone in front of the doors, arms crossed. No ribbon, no press, just me. The same doors Hannah had tried to block earlier that evening. Avery appeared a few moments later and handed me something folded in a napkin. It was a note from Leo, the head waiter. "Your family dines well," it read, "but you command the room with respect." I tucked it into my clutch. The silence felt different now, not empty, just clear. And then I heard the door open one last time. Heels on marble, a pause. A voice I hadn't heard alone in years. The soft click of heels on marble echoed behind me, then stopped. I didn't turn around. I already knew it was Hannah. She didn't say anything at first, just stood there in the quiet lobby, the velvet curtains swaying slightly as the air system shifted overhead. Outside, the streetlights cast a golden haze through the glass doors. The lobby looked just as I'd pictured it in the early days, clean, intentional, finished. Every inch told a story. Now she was seeing it not as a backdrop for a family dinner, but as something built, designed, chosen. "I stayed behind," she said finally, her voice lower than usual. "I guess I just wanted to understand how you did all this. Without us." I didn't move right away. I waited for her to finish. She didn't. I stood slowly and faced her, because I had to. She looked down for a second, then back up. "I underestimated you." I nodded once. "I know." Her eyes moved around the lobby, tracing the sconces, the art, the soft, glowing chandelier. "This place, it doesn't feel like anything we grew up around." I didn't respond. We were raised to play it safe, follow the rules, keep things neat. She let out a small breath. "You left and built something from nothing." I glanced toward the front desk. Avery had already stepped into the back. The night staff was giving us space. "I didn't build it alone," I said, "but I built it without being asked how, or why, or if I even should." She took a few steps forward and sat on the bench across from me. "When you left," she said quietly, "I didn't think you'd stay gone. I figured you'd call eventually, that you'd need something." "I didn't," I said. Not because I didn't need anything, but because I stopped expecting to be seen. She didn't argue. Her shoulders lowered a little. "Why didn't you ever tell us? I mean, not just about the hotel, but about all of it. The moves, the other properties." I sat again. Every time I tried to explain what I was doing, it became something to correct, or something to dismiss. I got tired of having to make a case for my own life. Hannah stayed quiet. "I'd come home for holidays," I said, "and you'd ask about my dating life, or if I was still doing laundry shifts. No one asked what I was actually doing." She rubbed her palms together slowly, then clasped her hands in her lap. "I guess I thought you were just figuring things out." "I was," I said, "but I was also working, learning, signing contracts, buying buildings, hiring people." She nodded. "I thought you liked being quiet," she said after a moment. "I thought that was your thing." I looked at her. I got quiet because no one listened. We sat there for a while. The lobby stayed quiet except for the distant hum of the vents. "I always thought Dad was hard on you," she said, "but I didn't think it bothered you." It did. More silence. I didn't try very hard to know you, she said finally. That's on me. I looked up at the photo above us again, the one from the grand opening. My arms crossed in front of the double doors. No one else in the frame. I don't need you to explain anything, I said. She shook her head. I'm not trying to. I just didn't know who you'd become. I leaned back a little. Neither did you want to. She swallowed. Is it too late to change that I didn't answer right away? I stood again and walked slowly toward the front doors. They were locked now, but the city lights outside still cast long reflections across the floor. I turned back to her. We can walk for a bit, I said. She rose almost cautiously and followed. We stepped out together. The air was cooler than earlier. The sounds of the city were still there, traffic rolling by in the distance, a few voices from a nearby patio, the hum of a streetcar a block over. But between us, things were still. We walked the edge of the block in silence. She glanced up at the building. I still can't believe it's yours. It's not just mine, I said. It's what I made out of what I didn't have. She looked straight ahead. I didn't mean what I said earlier, about you not being able to afford the place. I know. I was trying to keep control of something I didn't understand. I nodded. You don't have to explain it. She didn't speak again until we turned the corner and faced the main doors from the other side. What comes next? She asked. I'm not sure yet, I said. But it's going to be different. She stepped back from the curb and looked at me. Can I call you sometime? You can try. We stood there a few seconds longer before heading back inside. The lobby was quieter now. The candles were mostly out. The photo above the bench still hung straight. The staff had already reset the tables in the dining room. I walked with her to the elevator. She pressed the button but didn't get in right away. Thank you, she said, for not turning me away. I didn't say anything. I just gave her a nod. The doors opened and she stepped inside. As they closed behind her, I stood in the quiet again, not waiting for anything, just listening. The next morning, the hotel felt still. Not empty, just quieter than usual. The breakfast staff moved through their usual rhythms, setting out carafes of coffee, arranging fresh croissants on tiered trays, checking table settings in the lobby cafe. I stood near the window of my office, watching the early light stretch across 5th Street. The city was waking up like it always did, but something in me felt different. I hadn't heard from my parents since the dinner. Not a text, not a call. Hannah had sent a short message before sunrise. It just said, "Thank you for everything." I didn't reply. Not yet. Around mid-morning, Avery knocked on the door and stepped in. She held a clipboard and a pen, her expression even. "Quick update on reservations," she said, scanning her notes. The Jensen group confirmed for Saturday. The floral designer called with a change on the centerpieces for the Welburn wedding, and your father's assistant left a voicemail asking for a private meeting if you're available. I looked up from my desk. Where? She didn't say. Just that he wanted to speak directly. No mention of when. I nodded slowly. Let's wait. If he calls again, we'll offer a neutral location, lobby or rooftop. Nothing too formal. Understood. She hesitated for a second. And Charlotte? Yes. That dinner, it was handled perfectly. I gave her a small nod. Thank you. I couldn't have done it without you. She left, and I sat back in my chair. The sun had climbed higher now, casting sharper shadows on the floor. I could see the reflection of the front entrance from where I sat. I didn't know if I expected him to walk through it, but I stayed still for a long time, just watching. 2 days passed, then 3. Still no word. It wasn't anger I felt, more a kind of waiting I'd lived with before. Long stretches of silence where words were expected to be earned, not offered. On the 4th day, I stepped into one of the smaller suites where we kept archived design boards and sample materials. I wasn't sure why I went in. Maybe to clear my head, maybe to remind myself what I'd built. On one of the top shelves, I found the original sketches for the Athena redesign. Faint pencil lines over floor plan paper. Notes written in the margins in my handwriting. One corner was creased from when I'd tucked it into my coat pocket that first winter, back when the roof still leaked and the heat barely worked. I carried the folder into the lobby and sat near the fireplace. The flames weren't real, but the warmth still helped. I was flipping through notes on lighting placement when I heard a voice near the front desk. "Excuse me, I'm looking for Charlotte Bennett." It was my father. I stood quietly, closed the folder, and met him halfway across the lobby. He wore the same kind of coat. He always had gray wool, well fitted with gloves in one pocket, and a leather notebook tucked under his arm. He looked around. "This place is different in the daytime." "It holds up," I said. He gave a single nod. "Do you have time to talk?" I motioned toward the rooftop elevator. "We can go upstairs." We didn't speak during the ride up. The elevator moved slowly, giving us both time to settle into the quiet. When the doors opened, the rooftop garden looked just like I'd left it. Rows of potted herbs, trellises of ivy, cafe lights strung overhead. He followed me to one of the tables. We sat. There was no champagne, no wait staff, no audience. Just us. He cleared his throat. "I owe you an apology. I didn't know what you'd done, what you were doing. I thought you were still trying to figure things out." I didn't interrupt. "I saw the way people spoke to you at dinner. I've never seen Callahan address someone like that, not even at board meetings." I folded my hands on the table. I assumed things he said, based on what I wanted to believe, that you were safe, steady, not out there taking big risks. "I wasn't steady," I said. "I was building. I see that now." He leaned back slightly, taking in the space around us. "Your sister told me you bought your first property when you were 25. That's right. And now you've got 5 of them boutique hotels, each with a different focus. I started consulting at 27, opened Athena at 31. He looked at the edge of the table, ran a finger over the grain of the wood. "I missed all of it." "Yes." He looked up. "I can't fix that, but I'd like to know more if you're willing." I nodded once. "I'm not asking for anything," he added. "Just a place to start again." I reached into the folder I'd brought and slid one of the design sketches across the table. This was the lobby before it became what you saw the other night. He took it slowly, looking over the lines. "I didn't expect to feel what I felt walking in there," he said. "Pride and regret. All at once." We sat quietly for a while after that. When we returned to the lobby, he paused by the front desk. "Thank you for letting me in," he said. I nodded. As he walked toward the exit, I turned back toward Avery, who had appeared near the cafe. She raised an eyebrow. "Keep the file room open," I said. "I think we'll need it again soon." She gave a short smile. "Anything else?" "Yes," I said. "Call Hannah. Tell her I'm hosting a small gathering next week. Just the 3 of us. Here, no. Somewhere neutral. Somewhere new." As she made the note, I looked back at the doors where my father had just left. It wasn't about being seen anymore. Now it was about what I chose to show. And that was only just beginning. The following Wednesday, we met at a small restaurant tucked between a bookstore and a florist shop on a quiet stretch of Maple Avenue. Nothing trendy, nothing flashy, just quiet lighting, soft music, and polished wood booths worn smooth from years of regulars. I'd reserved a table in the back, one, with enough distance from the other diners to allow for pauses or silence or whatever might come. Hannah arrived first. She wore a cream-colored blouse and dark slacks, a little more formal than necessary. She had a gift bag in her hand, something small with tissue paper folded neatly at the top. She didn't offer it right away, just sat across from me and set the bag on the floor beside her. A few minutes later, our father stepped through the door, nodding at the host, scanning the room quickly until he spotted us. He was still in his work clothes, dark blazer, open collar, polished shoes. He carried no papers, this time no leather notebook, just his keys and a folded coat draped over one arm. We didn't stand. He sat down and placed the coat over the back of his chair. No one said much right away. The server brought water and menus. We thanked her quietly. After she left, the silence returned, but it wasn't tense. It was careful. Hannah was the first to speak. "I read that article you were featured in," she said, "the one about independent hotel leadership in the city. They quoted you near the end." I nodded. "They reached out a couple months ago. I didn't think it would get much circulation." "It did," she said. "Someone forwarded it to me." My father cleared his throat. "I've been thinking about what you said, about us never asking." I waited. He looked down at the menu, then set it aside. I think part of me didn't want to ask. I was afraid of the answer. That I was doing fine, I asked. "No," he said, looking up. That I hadn't been paying attention, and that it was too late to start. The server returned. We placed simple orders: grilled chicken, soup, coffee. After she left again, my father leaned back in his seat. "You remind me of your grandfather," he said. "He never asked for help, not once. He built his business on instincts, quiet ones. I didn't always understand him either. I didn't know much about him," I said. "No," he replied. "I didn't tell you much." There was a long pause before Hannah leaned forward slightly, resting her arms on the table. I think I got used to being the center of things she said. Spotlight was comfortable. I didn't realize how much space it took up. I looked at her. I didn't want the spotlight. I just didn't want to disappear. Our food came. The plates were hot and simple. Nothing fancy, but well made. Midway through the meal, Hannah reached for the bag she'd brought and set it on the table between us. "It's not much," she said. "Just something I found. I thought you should have it." I pulled out the tissue paper and found a small wooden box inside. Old, with dovetail corners and a brass latch that stuck a little. I opened it carefully. Inside was a hotel key, worn, faded numbers etched into the side. "I think it's from the first inn you worked at," she said, "the one outside Denver. I found it in a drawer back home with a bunch of your old things." I held it in my hand. The weight was familiar. "I used to wear this on a lanyard during night shifts," I said. It would jingle when I walked too fast down the hall. My father smiled faintly. "You kept it. I didn't know it was missing." We sat with that for a while. The restaurant buzzed softly around us. Other tables, other lives. But our corner remained still. Before the check came, my father said something I didn't expect. "I've been offered a chance to step back," he said. "Not retire, but scale down. Fewer hours. More time to actually see things. Like what I asked." "Like your work," he said. "Your spaces. Maybe even your team, if you'd allow it." He looked serious, not performative. "You want to visit?" I asked. "I want to understand," he replied. Hannah nodded. "Me too." I didn't answer right away. The check arrived. I covered it before either of them could reach for it. As we stood to leave, Hannah stepped closer. "I'm not trying to erase anything," she said. "But if there's room, I'd like to be part of what comes next." I met her eyes. "That depends on what you're willing to see." We walked out into the cool afternoon. The florist was still open next door, the scent of eucalyptus drifting faintly through the air. My father held the door open for both of us. We stepped onto the sidewalk together. "I'll be at the hotel on Friday," I said. "No meetings until noon." He nodded. "I'll be there." Hannah didn't say anything. She just squeezed my arm once, then turned toward the parking lot. As they walked away, I stood on the sidewalk for a moment longer. The key still rested in my coat pocket. My fingers curled around it just to feel the weight again. Some doors stay locked until you're ready to walk through them, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't walking through alone. Friday morning came with soft gray skies and a light drizzle brushing against the windows of Athena on Fifth. I arrived early before the lobby filled before the phones began ringing. The marble floors had just been polished, and the scent of fresh coffee from the cafe drifted into the air. Everything was in place, but I still walked the building, checking corners, listening to the quiet, letting my footsteps settle into the rhythm I'd known for years. By 10 o'clock, I was upstairs reviewing vendor contracts. Avery stopped by to say the rooftop had been prepped in case I wanted to meet guests there. I nodded, then turned back to my notes. It wasn't until just before noon that I heard the chime of the elevator. I looked up. My father stepped out alone, no assistant, no briefcase, just an umbrella tucked under one arm and a slow, steady glance around the space. He didn't speak right away, just took a breath and looked at the ceiling tiles, the columns, the brass sconces along the hallway. "I never realized how much detail you built into this place," he said. "It's all deliberate." "It is," I replied. He motioned toward the hallway. "Can we walk?" I led him down the west wing corridor past the smaller conference rooms into one of the side lounges reserved for private bookings. The room had wide windows, a walnut bar in the corner, and a framed photograph on the wall our kitchen team on the hotel's one-year anniversary lined up in front of the courtyard archway. My father stood in front of it for a moment. "You remember names?" he asked. "All of them," I said. "That's Tomas on the end. He's our pastry chef." "Been here since day one." He nodded slowly. "I used to think leadership was about being the loudest in the room, or the most certain. But this place has a different kind of leadership." He turned toward me. "I've started telling people," he said, "about what you've done." I raised an eyebrow. "You have—" "Your mother first," he said, "then a few colleagues. I showed one of them your photo in a trade magazine. They recognized the brand before the name. That's usually how I prefer it." "I understand now why you kept it quiet," he said. "There's power in letting the work speak first." He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "I'm stepping back this quarter," he said. "I've accepted a reduced schedule, more time, fewer titles." I didn't ask why. He continued anyway. "I realized I've spent too long being proud of the wrong things. I don't want to miss what's right in front of me." He handed me the paper. It was a schedule light travel, fewer meetings, space between the days. "I'd like to visit the other hotels," he said, "if that's something you'd allow." I considered that for a moment. "On your own time," I said, "not mine." "Fair enough," he said. Avery knocked gently and stepped in with a tray. 2 coffees, 1 black one with cream, and a small dish of sugar cubes. She set it down without interrupting and gave me a small nod before exiting. My father picked up the cup without hesitation. "This was always what you wanted?" he asked. "It was what I needed," I said. He stirred his coffee, then looked up. "And the rest of it, the way we treated you, the way we made you feel invisible. I can't take that back." "No," I said, "but you can stop repeating it." He nodded. We drank our coffee quietly. The lounge was warm, the windows beaded with rain. When we returned to the lobby, Hannah was already there, seated in one of the velvet chairs by the fireplace. She stood as we approached. She was holding a file folder. "I brought something," she said. She opened it and handed me 2 documents printouts from a law firm she'd recently joined. "They want to redesign their client hospitality strategy," she said. "I told them I knew someone who builds spaces people remember." I glanced through the brief. "Clear layout, practical notes, clean margins. You want to work together?" I asked. "If you'll have me," she said, "not as your sister, as someone who finally understands the value of a door that stays open." I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. She stepped aside and let me walk past her first. I noticed it. My father followed a few paces behind as we walked to the front. I reached for the door before either of them could. Outside, the rain had slowed, Just enough to dampen the air, not enough to turn us back. We stood under the awning, and for a second, no one moved. "I'd like to host a dinner," I said. "One of mine. My menu, my space. Just family. But this time I choose the seating." They both nodded. "No speeches," I added. "And no stories that leave people out." "Deal," Hannah said. We walked toward the street, our steps falling into rhythm without much thought. The table had already turned once. Now it was mine to set. We planned the dinner for a Sunday evening, nothing extravagant, just a small table in the rooftop garden of Athena, the same space where I'd once sat alone with a glass of wine and a notebook full of unspoken thoughts. This time the table was set for 4. Just me, Hannah, our parents, and no audience, no head seats, just 4 equal places in the fading light. The sky that night was streaked with soft orange, the kind that fades gently into gray. A few candles flickered in glass votives, and the scent of rosemary from the garden drifted through the air. The meal was quiet, easy. Hannah asked questions not about who I was dating or if I'd settled down, but about design choices, staff I'd mentored, what city I was looking at next. My mother listened more than she spoke. Occasionally, I caught her glancing at the skyline like she was trying to place herself inside a story she'd never thought to read. After dessert, my father raised his glass, not for a toast, not for a speech, but just in a simple gesture of acknowledgement. "I see you now," he said, "and I'm proud." I was always proud. I just didn't say it. There was no need to respond. The silence that followed wasn't heavy this time. It was whole. When they left, they didn't rush. No distracted goodbyes. Just warm jackets, unhurried steps, and the kind of eye contact that had been missing for years. Hannah stayed behind for a minute longer. We cleared a few dishes together without saying much. Before she stepped into the elevator, she turned to me and said, "I used to think strength was about leading every room, but now I think it's about standing your ground even when no one's looking." She didn't wait for a reply. The doors closed slowly, and I stood alone on the rooftop again. Only this time, it didn't feel like a rooftop at all. It felt like a home I'd built from the quiet up. People talk a lot about success as titles or money or some polished moment where the world finally claps for you. But I've learned it's not about applause. It's about building something real when no one's watching. It's about knowing who you are before anyone else decides they care. And it's about staying steady, so when they do finally look, you're already standing. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this story meant something to you, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And if you've ever had to grow in the shadows, just to be seen, make sure you never let anyone dim what you've built. You've earned it.